Hello everyone, this is Charlie from the Bloomingdale Public Library and welcome to PowerPoint Charts and Graphs. Now I took the name from an old Letterman sketch because I thought the name was kind of catchy, but technically graphs are a kind of chart and we're going to be covering a little more than just charts today, namely SmartArt and tables. So let's go ahead and get started. So all these things fit under the heading of infographics. I generally don't like when you make a new word by combining two existing words, but I think this one's pretty apt because an infographic is just a graphic that shows information. Infographics can include words, numbers, shapes, symbols, etc. Basically, it's a visual aid that ties words and numbers together. And it can even be animated, but we're not doing anything like that today. Infographics show information in a more efficient, interesting, and understandable way than your typical bullet point list. You definitely want your audience to be interested and understanding what you're saying, otherwise you're just wasting their time and making them hate you. And as far as efficiency goes, I think you'll agree that a picture is worth 1,000 words. If you're trying to describe the weather in America to somebody, it would take a pretty good chunk of text to do that, but if you just show a map, you see all the temperatures, the fronts, etc. It's just a much more efficient way of showing information. So because of this, I would recommend using infographics wherever you can in your PowerPoint presentations without being redundant. They're just more interesting and more effective than your standard bullet point list. Also, you can see over here on the right, we have a pie graph of infographic appeal. You see the vast majority of people tend to love and like them, with just a sliver of people thinking meh or finding them pretentious and deceptive. Now, even though that's just for comic appeal, you can see how the graphic kind of hammers it home a little bit better than just words. We are going to start with SmartArt. SmartArt is a way to graphically organize text. So it's more about words than numbers. So you'll typically use SmartArt more to show hierarchies, relationships, and maybe steps of a procedure versus things like spreadsheets, tallies, percentages, and things like that. Technically, SmartArt is created by putting outline items into shapes and text boxes. So you will create an outline and SmartArt will turn that into a picture. A text box can be converted into SmartArt and vice versa. And once you have SmartArt created, the individual elements can be treated just like you would ordinarily. So if you have a shape as part of your SmartArt, you can still grab that shape, drag it somewhere else, change its size, its color, things of that nature. Some SmartArt graphics are more functional and dynamic than others, and the only way to know how your outline will react with the SmartArt is through experimentation. So some SmartArt will hold more items than others, some will go deeper than others. If it doesn't go more than a couple levels deep, it'll just start putting a bullet list inside of the shape instead of creating more shapes. And sometimes if you've got too many items, they won't show up at all, and the outline will exit out. And I'll show you a demonstration of that. So some SmartArt is also designed to hold images, though you can always add them yourself. Like I said, the shapes act like they would ordinarily, so you can just take a shape and add a background manually. So let's get to creating some SmartArt. I'm actually going to bail out of the PowerPoint presentation, and we'll demonstrate how to add some SmartArt here. The primary way is to start with the content box, like this, and then click on Insert a SmartArt Graphic, this icon in the upper right here. When you click that, you'll get this little window here, and you can choose from a whole bunch of different categories and a whole bunch of designs within each category. So if you've already got some content there and you can't use the icon in the content box, you can go to the Insert tab, click on SmartArt, and that'll take you to the same place. One final way, like I already hinted at, you can turn an existing bullet list into a piece of SmartArt. I'm just going to paste a basic outline in right there. And with this box selected, I'm going to go to the Home tab, click Convert to SmartArt, and as I roll over each of the images, you can see a preview of what we'll get. If you wanted to use something that isn't already there, click on More SmartArt Graphics, and again, we come back to this window. So let's go ahead and work with some SmartArt. Personally, I think it's easier to create your bulleted list first and then convert that into SmartArt just because it's easier to see what you're doing. But I'm going to go from scratch and do it the old-fashioned way. So we're going to start by clicking on the Insert a SmartArt Graphic icon in the content box. And then from this list here, I'm going to choose Hierarchy and then this design that looks like a family tree. This is a very versatile design. You can add plenty of items and go probably as deep as you like. I find most designs don't let you go more than 2 levels. So that's something to keep in mind. So once we have our SmartArt graphic inserted with a whole bunch of default text, you click on this little arrow on the left, and here's where you can see the outline that is building the SmartArt. I'm going to go ahead and just delete it all. And you see once I do that, we just have the one node of our tree here. And I'm not going to be too original with this, just for the sake of speed. But you see, as I add items to the outline, depending on how I do it, the shapes will dynamically change their position. So we'll stop at 6. This particular design also has a way to add images. As you can see, there's image icons to the left of the outline. So if I go ahead and click on one of those, you can either find an image on your hard drive, or you can go searching the internet, which I will do. And my default search is a car. I wonder how many people have used this green car. You see, once I do, we get a nice little car inserted into our SmartArt. We also have another little tab up here that should look familiar. It's something we've seen before. So again, it's just a regular image, even though it's a part of our SmartArt, and we can mess with it the way we would ordinarily. There we go. Now we can see our whole car. And again, we can also mess with the shapes and even the positions if you like. And in this case, you can see the lines actually dynamically move around for us, although the words do not. So you'd have to move those individually. I think you get the point. If you do make too much of a mess of what you're doing, you go to the SmartArt Tools Design tab, click on Reset Graphic, and it puts everything back to where it belongs. We can also come over and convert our piece of SmartArt to text, and we get something like that. I'm going to go ahead and undo that and show you some other things we can do here. You see, we can change the layouts up at the top here under the layout section in the design tab. We can add shapes. We can change the colors. The color scheme is based on the theme. You can see everything change dynamically as I roll over. And again, under the Format tab is where you can start changing some of the colors, outlines, shapes, etc. as well. So it's fun to play around with, and again, if you mess things up too much, you can go ahead and reset the graphics and it'll put everything back in place. So to show you a less versatile design, I'm going to go ahead and we're going to go to Layouts, More Layouts, and I'm going to go to Cycle and this Hexagon Radial. You see, when I select this one, things look a whole lot different. If I start messing around with the levels, you see we don't even have 4, 5, and 6. They get cut out because of the way the SmartArt is designed. So that's something to pay attention to as you mess around with your SmartArt. Make sure everything is shown in the SmartArt and make sure the hierarchy is the way you like. Otherwise, you can play around with the designs and the format to your heart's desire. There's a lot there. Just have fun with it and remember the undo button. Next up is tables. It's probably the least interesting of the three visually, but still an important part of your PowerPoint repertoire. So let's go ahead and have a look. I'm sure you've already seen a table before, but in case you needed a definition, it's a type of infographic where data is contained in cells organized by rows and columns. So I'm going to bail out of the presentation here and go to an empty slide, and we'll have a look at a couple ways we can insert a table into the slideshow. So the first way would be with the content box. We'll go ahead and click on the insert table icon in the upper left. And when we do that, we get this little window here. We can choose how many rows and columns we like with the up and down arrows, or you can just enter it in. Hit OK, and there you go. Obviously a bit more rows than our slide is capable of handling. Ooh. We're going to go ahead and delete this guy anyway. A second way we can go about inserting a table is with the Insert tab. If we go to Insert, and then the table command is on the left. When you click on that, you get a nice little grid. And when you roll over the grid, you can see you influence the amount of rows and columns you get on the slide. So choose what you like, click, and that will set everything into place. Alternatively, you can go to the Insert tab, click on the table, click on Insert Table, and then it'll pop up this little window here. So just like the SmartArt, if you go the Insert tab route, you're going to place the table on top of whatever content is already on the slide and cover it up. So keep that in mind. A third way we can add a table to a slideshow slide is by copying and pasting from a spreadsheet in Excel. So just go ahead and open up your Excel file, make a selection, copy it, go to your slide, paste it, and there you go. You'll probably have some formatting to do if you go this route. Your paste options might give you something better to work with, but probably not. So alternatively, I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to create a table first and then paste into an existing table. So with this table here, I'm going to go ahead, click in the top left cell, click paste, and that looks like something we can work with a little more easily. So those are the ways you can insert a table into your slideshow. Once you have your table inserted into your slideshow or created from scratch, there's a couple of things we can do with it. First thing you might want to do is add some data. And to do that, all you got to do is click in a cell and start typing. So let's do planes. And we'll add some numbers here. 1, 3. So obviously this doesn't look quite right compared with the rest of the table, but we'll make it match. I'm going to go ahead and click in the top left cell, then shift click on the bottom right cell, and that will select the entire table. And let's start in the Layout tab. So under Alignment, we have our horizontal alignment here. So there's middle, right, and left. We'll set it to middle. Below that, we have our vertical alignment, top, middle, and bottom. We'll set that to middle. Over on the far right here is where we can insert and delete rows. So if I were to put my cursor in this guy here, we can insert a row above by clicking on that command. I'm going to undo that. If you want to insert a column to the right, you just click on that command. I think that should make sense. If you wanted to split a cell, you just put your cursor inside a cell and click Split Cells, and you can turn this single cell into its own table, basically. So if I were to turn it into a 2x2 table with 2 rows, 2 columns, you get something like that. Conversely, if you select a bunch of adjacent cells you can click on Merge Cells, and it'll put everything back together. So that's some formatting we can do. Let's go ahead and have a look at our design options. So under Table Tools Design Options, on the far left, we have some banding checkboxes. You can go ahead and click on those, see what it does for us. I'm going to leave the header row and first column banded like that, so our data remains light. Under Table Styles, we can change the colors, the shadings, things like that. You can see a bit of it peeking out, changing dynamically as I roll over. Make it red. If you wanted to highlight a cell, all you gotta do is click in, go to Shading, and choose one of the colors there. These color schemes are all based on the theme, so if you wanted to change the colors, you can go ahead and change the theme, which we discussed in a previous class. Or you can go to more fill colors and set your own colors as well. But I prefer sticking within the theme colors. You can also change the borders if you like. Let's say if this bottom row was to be like a total row, all you gotta do is select the cells you want to change the borders for. Go to Borders and select where you'd like the border to appear. So on the bottom row, if you wanted to make it a total row, you'd probably want to create a top border like that. Keep in mind that this border color is based on the pen color. So if the pen color matches the default border color, like if this pen color was white, you wouldn't see anything show up. So make sure the pen color is different than the default border color. So just to make everything match, let's go ahead and select all the cells. I'm going to go to the Home tab, and this is where we can set the fonts and the font styles, just like you would ordinarily. So we'll go ahead and set it to 20. And now everything matches. So that's a couple of things you can do with the table. Last but not least are charts, and they're probably my favorite of the bunch. A chart is a type of infographic that uses shapes or symbols to represent data, like pie charts and bar graphs. PowerPoint has a pretty good collection to choose from. Where SmartArt is built on an outline, charts are built on data tables. In other words, once you choose your category and design of chart, it'll put it into the slideshow along with a data table that you have to manipulate in order to build out your chart. Weirdly, you cannot convert a table into a chart, but you can copy and paste table data into the data table of a chart, even from Excel. And just like SmartArt, the design and category of a chart can be changed after the initial creation. So like I said, there's a pretty big collection of options to choose from. So you can go ahead and pick one, fill out your data table, and still go back and change things if you so desire. And unlike SmartArt, where you can basically move everything around, change the sizes and colors and whatever, shapes and text are a bit more restricted in charts. So you can still move some things around a little bit and change colors and designs, but you can't really make a big mess moving things around and changing sizes like that, which is probably a good thing. So from there, we're going to go ahead and break out of the presentation one more time. Go to our blank slide here and look at the ways we can insert a chart into our slideshow. The first and my favorite way, once again, is with the content box. So go ahead and in the content box on the top row, in the middle, you have the insert chart icon. Click on that guy, and that will bring up this window. So you've got your list of categories on the left, and again, your designs on the right. Again, a pretty good collection. Lots of different types for lots of different kinds of data. So after you pick your charts, pick your design, click OK, and you get something like this, where again, you've got your chart in the content box along with the data table along with it. I'm actually going to X that out, undo that, look at a few of the other things we can do. Again, we have the Insert tab and the Chart command there. It'll take you to the same window. Again, remember when you use the Insert tab route, you're going to put your your chart right on top of any content that's already on the slide. So just be aware. And one other thing you can do, and I don't really recommend it, is you can actually copy and paste a chart from Excel. So I'm going to copy this chart here, paste it right here. And the reason I don't recommend this is because it links the files. So in other words, whenever you do your presentation, you're going to need to have your Excel spreadsheet as well. It doesn't need to be open or anything, but it has to be in the same place and named the same thing. So if you were to take this PowerPoint presentation and put it on a thumb drive to use in a different laptop, you'd have to have the Excel file with it, and you'd have to be pointing at it. So just to show you what I mean here, I'm going to go to File, and under Info, in the bottom right corner, we have a little spot that says Edit Links to Files. So once I pasted that chart from Excel, I have a link here that needs to be intact. Otherwise, you're going to get an error message that says it can't find the link file. So in the case that you do start moving things around, you would just make sure the files are together, change the source, make sure you're pointing at the correct file, click Open, and that will restore the link. So again, I don't really recommend it because it introduces that little complication. What I would recommend doing instead is, again, I'm going to undo this, is I would create a chart and then go ahead and copy the data instead of the chart and just paste that into the data table. And that way, when you go to File, Info, you don't have a linked document. I'd like to finish up by looking at some things we can do with charts. So first we're going to need a chart. I'm going to go ahead, click on the Insert Chart icon in the content box. I'm going to choose the bar graph, and we'll make it 3D. Okay. Again, once we have our chart inserted, we've got a data table to fill out. It always starts with default data, so just be in mind that there's some data already there that you may not want. I don't have a category 4, so that's going away. Okay. Exit out. And again, you can add everything manually to it as you like, and you'll see everything fill out in the chart as you do. So to the right of our chart, we've got a couple of options here. The first one is the chart elements. We've got check boxes for all of them. If you uncheck the elements, you can see they go away. Then we just have some sticks. You can also check them all, and then we have a pretty busy visual. So it's up to you what you want to include there, but keep in mind some of these elements have default values, like chart title here, which you might want to change to something a bit more relevant. There we go. So if you double click on an element, you get a little window on the right with all sorts of options here that I am not going to go through today, but just be aware that they're there. So you can add some styles and effects to your words if you like. You can change the look of your data too. So if you want to make them into cones, that's kind of cool. Change the depth and the width of the gaps. Okay. So again, just be aware it's there for pretty much every element in the chart. And I think the charts will all have different options as well. So our second look here is styles and color. If I click on that, we've got our list of styles here for this chart type. You can see it changes dynamically as I roll over it. We can also choose a new color, and these colors are based on the theme. I talked about theme colors in a previous class. We'll select the yellow there. The final option to the right of the chart is the filter. So if you wanted to remove some of the data from the chart, you can do that. So if you only wanted to see red vehicles here, you can get rid of the white and the black ones. Apply. And there you go. So the data is still in the table. You can go ahead and click on the filter. check everything back, and we're back to full strength for our chart. So if we go and look at the Design tab under Chart Tools, you'll see a bunch of the same options we just looked at. We've got the Add Chart Elements, Color Changes, Styles, Quick Layout. These can look a little bit different. Also under the Design tab, we can go back and edit the data. So if we want to add planes, oops. Maybe another color. That's all there is to it, and you can see it dynamically change as we do so. If you like, we can still change the chart type. Again, it's under the Design tab. If you wanted to make it columns, flat columns, okay. So even though we did all that design work and added all the data, changing everything is still just a matter of going to the Design tab and doing Change Chart Type. We have a Format tab too, but this should look pretty familiar by this point. Just go ahead and select what you want to change, choose your shape styles. You can't actually do the shapes. You're a lot more restricted with the charts than you are with the SmartArt, so keep that in mind. But that's about it. So I hope you took something away from this, added something to your PowerPoint skills. I thank you for listening and hope you have a good day.